everyone, and welcome to this week's Tuesday Tips. My name is Pam. I am one of your nurse advocates with Your Nurse Advocate Consulting. And today we're going to talk about something really kind of deeply personal and honestly really tough, and that's coping with the heartbreak of a parent's declining health. November is National Hospice and Palliative Care Month, so it's really a perfect time to shine a light on the support, the compassion, and the resources that are available for families during this season. First of all, let's acknowledge the fact that, watching a parent, decline is probably one of the most hardest things you'll ever face. If you're feeling overwhelmed, sad, even guilty, you're not alone. And these emotions are normal, and it's okay to feel them. I mean, you really, as we'll talk about a little bit, you really have to go through those stages of grief. So remember, caring for someone you love isn't just about managing medications or doctor's appointments. It's really about navigating the emotional roller coaster as well, especially for a long distance family that maybe they're not able to spend as much time as they would like to spend with a parent that has maybe a terminal illness. And so there's a lot of special circumstances that make it very difficult to handle. And, I'm going to share a story here, and I'm sure many of you have really, can relate to this story. My dad was a man's man. He prided on being able to support his family, take care of his kids, and things like that, and very proud, very old-fashioned. And he was in those final stages of renal cancer. That was missed, unfortunately, but we knew what the end course was going to be. And so he never went to the doctor. He had a stroke many years before that and went to the doctor for the very first time in I don't know how long. And I used to try and say, Dad, let me take your blood pressure. And he'd literally run around the kitchen table, me holding my blood pressure cuff and my stethoscope, and he would not he got angry. And so, of course, I stopped. But so here he is, with his two daughters, his two oldest daughters in his hospital room. He had been on hospice, got scared, and decided he wanted to go to the hospital for treatment. And so he signed off of hospice, went into the hospital, and Neil, there's not really nothing we can do for you. Dad, can we just take you back home tomorrow on hospice? And so we had this whole conversation with him, and my sister and I were sitting in the room with him, and he said, I know my dad loved orange sherbet. That was his most favorite thing, was orange sherbet. And so he motioned me to come over. My sister and I were each sitting in a chair in the room, and he motioned me to come over, and he says, Pam, come here. And I says, what, Dad? And he says, can I get some orange sherbet? I really would like some orange sherbet. And I'm like, sure. I think most hospitals, at least at that time when I was working in the hospitals, we usually had orange sherbet. And his voice was weak. He was just really a shell of the man that my sister and I knew. And he had a quick temper. He had no patience. And this is the man that we grow up, living with and loving, but this was not him. And so got some orange sherbet. And so I had to feed him the orange sherbet. And my sister stood on one side of the bed. I was on the side of the right side of the bed, feeding him his orange sherbet. And I'm giving him his orange sherbet. And finally, he just yelled out, a couple of words that I won't share, but he said, Pam, you're feeding me too fast. And, it just the way he said it. And it was just our old dad. And I looked at my sister, and here we were in this moment, and he ended up going home the next day and passing. But here we were in this moment where, we thinking that this really isn't our dad. And this was a glimmer of the dad that we grew up and the dad that we knew and loved. And I looked at my sister, we started giggling. We both looked at my dad, and my dad started laughing because he knew it too. And so, Obviously, I slowed down, but those are the moments, those are the things that you need to hang on to. And those are the things that really help you as time goes on to, keep the memory alive and to remember them the way that they were versus, the way that they were, when they passed. So what do we mean? So let's talk a little bit about the resources. So what is hospice and what is palliative care? Palliative care is a service that focuses on improving the quality of life. They manage symptoms with anyone with a serious or chronic illness at any stage and not just at the end of life. And so you can still be getting chemotherapy, radiation. You could still be trying to do whatever you can. You can actively get treatment with palliative care, but palliative care is a bigger focus on managing those symptoms and improving the quality of life. Depending on where you live, a hospice, a palliative care provider oftentimes is a nurse practitioner, physician's assistant. And depending on where you live, there might be two types of palliative care services that are available. One would be that's affiliated with your clinic. You go to them just like you go to any other doctor appointment. Another type of palliative care program has the palliative care providers actually come to you in your house. And this is very helpful. I know I've shared this before, but with one of our clients that has Alzheimer's, it got to the point where the spouse couldn't take him to the doctor anymore. He was just getting weak and she didn't feel comfortable trying to get him into the car. And so we worked on getting palliative care. We found a palliative care agency in their area that the nurse practitioner would come to the house. Well, that eliminated the need for him to go into the doctor's office. He got his flu shot. He got everything that he needed, prescriptions ordered, the whole 9 yards, and the provider came to him. So that is palliative care. So hospice care, hospice is specialized support for those nearing the end of life, focusing on comfort, dignity, and honoring wishes. Both services are about the whole person, addressing not just the physical needs, but the emotional and spiritual needs as well. Now, with hospice care, you must not be actively seeking a cure. You have to agree to let nature take its course, and hospice does its best. Again, many times with hospice, people, once they get their symptoms so well controlled while they're on hospice, they actually get better. And so they discharge, what we call graduate from hospice. And then as time goes on, as the decline begins again, come back on hospice. So you can come off of hospice if you need to. And both Linda and I have many, many years experience in home health and hospice. And it's a big passion of ours. And we actually, I put the link in the comment section and will also be in the description for the replay video that we'll share on our YouTube channel. But we actually wrote a book called Cracking the Hospice Code. So we've got that link for you. It's stories about hospice past clients and that we've had. And the families have graciously given us permission to be able to share their stories. So it's real people, real stories. And we also, the other part of the book is also about trying to debunk the top 10 misconceptions of hospice. And a lot of people are afraid of hospice. They believe that hospice is just for the last couple of days of care. And I've had patients, my personal patients, that have been on hospice for over a year. And so, but just continued to decline. So those are the two types of supportive care that you can have for a terminal illness or a chronic condition that is declining as you're trying to serve and help your aging loved one. So some tips that we're going to offer is, number one, allow yourself to grieve. Give yourself permission to grieve. The grieving process goes on for quite a while, especially with someone that has a chronic disease or a terminal illness that you know what the end result is going to be. But you can start and you give yourself permission to grieve even before your parent is gone. And this is called anticipatory grief. And it is real. It really is. So let yourself feel sadness, anger, frustration, or even relief. If they've suffered for a long time with a chronic illness, it's okay to feel relief because it's very painful to watch an aging loved one or a loved one with a terminal illness to suffer. So some of the things that really help is journaling, talking with a friend or joining a caregiver support group can really help you process this. And my mother-in-law, when my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law joined a grief group that was with the hospice organization that assisted us with my father-in-law. And she kept telling us, you don't understand. You don't understand. You've never lost a spouse. You don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like. And that was one of the benefits that she got with her support group and her grief group, is that she was surrounded by a group of people that also lost many of them lost a spouse or a loved one. And my mother-in-law took her a year to really process and get through all the stages of grief and to be able to continue living, so to speak, and not in constant grief. And she stopped going to church during that year. I mean, she was very withdrawn. She didn't want to go anywhere. And so everybody processes grief differently. And we're going to talk about that now in a minute. So absolutely allow yourself to grieve even before your parent or your aging loved one is gone. So educating your family, your caregivers about the normal stages of grief is both validating and practical. So let's talk about those for a couple of minutes. It's really helpful to know that grief is a process, and it often comes in waves. So many people experience common stages of grief, and I'm going to list these in an order, but let me tell you, they can be experienced not in a perfect order. You can go back and forth to other, stages. So I'm just going to list what the common stages of grief are. And that's number one, which is denial, struggling to accept what's happening, or kind of that feeling numb, kind of just going with the flow, but it's really not sinking in. And that often is described as the first stage of denial. But again, you can enter and re-enter these stages at different times during the grieving process. The next stage is anger. So now you're accepted the fact that your loved one is going to pass, but you're angry, you're bitter. Why? My sister-in-law struggled with anger and bitterness for quite a bit, because she led a very healthy life. She did all these homeopathic, natural methods of being healthy. And it was very frustrating for her, knowing that she did the best that she could to care for herself. And she ended up with a cancer that could not be cured. And so you could be angry with the situation. You could be angry with the disease. You can be angry at the healthcare system. Like in my dad's case, we could have been angry with the doctor because he missed the tumor on his kidney. So it's very easy to want to blame and get angry or frustrated. And you may even blame your loved one. Why are you leaving me? Why are you doing this to me? And it's displaced. I mean, it's not, as you go through them, you realize that you're not really mad at, but you have to take this anger and frustration out on someone. And we displace that anger and frustration in many, many different ways. Next stage is bargaining, wishing that you could change things, or thinking, if only, and you can get really caught in that game. If I'd only done this, if we've only done that, if we would have done this sooner, if we hadn't waited. So bargaining is a real step and a real stage of grief. Another stage of grief is depression, where you just have this deep sadness and overwhelm, and you're feeling stuck. And I really think that that's what my mother-in-law struggled with. Is her and my father-in-law did everything together. They were inseparable. They were always together doing things. And so, she was without her best friend. She was without her husband. And so I think she really got caught in that deep sadness and overwhelm and felt stuck. I don't think she, for a long time knew how she was going to get past that. And so you can go through a stage of depression. And then finally, we hope that at some point in time, and again, there's no timeline. It may take someone months. It may say, like my mother-in-law, may take a year. It may take longer. There's no rule book on how long you're going to grieve for someone. But that last stage, the stage that we want everybody to get to, is that acceptance. So finally finding some peace and learning to live with your new reality. That doesn't mean you don't miss the person. That doesn't mean you don't miss them every day, but it just means that you can go on living because you've accepted the fact that they're gone and you're coping. So we talked about going through these stages in any order. It's normal to revisit them. There's no right way to grieve, as we mentioned. So please give yourself grace and patience as you navigate, these emotions. And if you find yourself not moving through the stages and you can't seem to get to the acceptance stage, please reach out for help. There's many, whether you reach out to a social worker at your clinic, you reach out to a grief group. Many hospice groups or organizations have grief groups, and you do not have to have been a hospice patient, or your aging loved one doesn't have to be a former client of theirs. They open up their grief groups to the public. And so your Aging and Disability Resource Center, your Center of Aging, your County Office on Aging is another great place to look for grief groups. Mental health providers at your clinic that specialize in grief. There are lots of resources out there, a lot of telehealth. Even if you're uncomfortable going to a group, you can maybe meet with a mental health provider one-on-one, on your computer, and if that seems more private for you. And so tip number 2, and this is a biggie, ask for help. Not only ask for help, but accept the help. Don't try to do it all alone. Reach out to family, friends, surround yourself, stay busy, lean on your faith community or professional advocates like us, like your Nurse Advocate Consulting. Remember, hospice and palliative care teams include social workers, chaplains, counselors. They're there for you and not just your aging loved one. So tip number 3, cherish the small, meaningful moments. Like we shared that story with my dad. My sister and I will never forget that moment. Out of all the moments and all the things that we share. And, as a family, when we go on a family vacation every year, that was a big part. My dad loved it. And so oftentimes you'll find us talking about sharing stories and laughing and you'll, just cherish those and bring them up. That's how you keep their memory alive with you for as long as you live. So read together, share old stories, listen to favorite music. My sister actually did a playlist of a lot of my dad's favorite songs and songs that reminded us of Dad. So those are another way to be able to reminisce. And on those days where you're feeling a little lonely and missing them a little bit more, those are the type of things that you can look at. Legacy video. If you know that they're going to pass and their time is short, interview them, have a grandchild interview them, video them, so that's something that you have, that they can be with you forever. So, your presence and love is what matters most. So we talked about keeping the memories alive for your family. We're going to share a resource with you at the end too. And I've put that link in. We did a video with Judy Helm, who specializes in legacy work. And so if that's something that interests you, you might want to check out that video. We put the link in the chat. We will also put that link if you're catching the replay on a YouTube channel. So legacy work can really help you feel you have honored your loved one and that you feel you've preserved their legacy for the rest of the family. And again, photo albums, videos, song playlists, any of those things are whatever way helps you memorialize them and keep their memory alive. So it's a powerful, and it is also a huge part of healing. And so, we talked about being as simple as just recording family stories. If you can't record them, maybe you're interviewing family members and they're sharing their favorite story about that person. And we talked about a photo album. Here's another thing that you can do. Maybe help them write letters to their grandchildren, help them write letters to other friends or family members, and, making a scrapbook. So legacy projects that, you celebrate your parents' life, your values, and also your wisdom. And they give you both a chance to focus on the positives, honor special moments, and create something meaningful that will really last for generations. And like I had mentioned before with our stories, these activities really spark joy and laughter and connection even during difficult times. So there's always always look for that light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. So tip number 4 is take care of yourself. Eat, sleep, take breaks. When my dad was passing and he was home, the whole family was there, and it was, he got home probably about 11 o'clock in the morning and then passed that evening, and just hours of vigil. Same thing with my father-in-law. We just sat vigil, at his hospital bed. And so you need to take breaks. And if you're running on empty, you can't care for your parent or your aging loved one, let alone yourself. So take a short walk, take a shower, call a friend, do whatever you need to do just to take a few minutes to recharge your battery. And, and this brings up a tough memory for when my mother-in-law passed away. It was a year ago in April, and my husband and we were at her bedside the whole time. She fell down the stairs, had a brain bleed, and she passed almost exactly 24 hours after she was admitted to the hospital. And my husband and I stayed with her the whole time, and she was getting close. Her car was still at church. We hadn't left. And, when we left, we weren't 20 minutes away, and we were going to go home, change our clothes, take a shower, come back. But we were only 20 minutes away when we got a call from a couple of our daughters saying that were there with her that she was passing. So we weren't there with her. So, but she did have family with her. And so we have to take comfort in that, but that was hard. That was a hard one for me. And so, but you got to remember, you've got to take care of yourself. You're not going to be good for anyone. So tip number 5, advocate for your loved one. Knowledge is power. So learn about your parent or your aging loved one's condition. What what to expect? What are your options for care? What does your aging loved one want? That's the most important thing. We all have our own ideas about how we want it to go. But you know what the most important thing is find out how your aging loved one, what do they want? We want to make sure that we do everything we can so that they go out, they're in control, and they go out the way that they want to go out, and their wishes are honored, and they do it their way. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Speak up for your parents or your aging loved one's wishes. And our team's here to help you navigate the system, help you educate on what might be the right choices so that you have informed choices. And so in closing, if you're struggling right now, please know that you don't have to do this alone. Reach out, whether it's to a local hospice, a palliative care team, a social worker at your clinic, the Aging and Disability Resource Center, or a nurse advocate like us. We have free resources, checklists. We have a private support community just for you. And you can also check out our Senior Saturday newsletter for more tips and encouragement. Please don't hesitate to drop any questions or experience in the comments. If any of you have been through this and you have some information that would be helpful to our community, please, we'd love to hear it. There's no one way or one recipe. So what maybe worked for you might be able to work for someone else. So please don't hesitate to share. And remember, you're doing an incredible job in a really hard situation. So we are sending you all the strength and compassion for during this National Hospice and Palliative Care Month. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and we're going to wrap up this Tuesday Tips. I want to say thank you for joining us, and we'll see you back here next week at another Tuesday Tips. Take care.